Wow, that was it. Oh, is this on? Is this on now? Great. I love the cheers. Great, because I like to bring the energy, and I'm going to be expecting this from you later, by the way, so get prepared. We're not sleeping in our seats for this one, okay? Not that you did for the others, because they were brilliant. Actually, can we give a round of applause for everyone that spoke today? Because they were brilliant, and I think they deserve it. Now, I'm going to start off by telling you a story. And this story is about these two people right here. This man here is my father, or was my father, Chris Green, and my mum, Debbie Green. Now, this was when my dad was actually my mum's lecturer, but we don't talk about that. It was actually just before they started their business, and they were around my age, which is 27, and they had absolutely no money. They had no money, they had no connections. They did have an education. My dad was working towards his PhD, and my mum had her degree. But they quite literally had nothing. I mean, I heard the stories growing up of my parents sleeping on a roll-out mattress on the floor for 2 years because they couldn't afford a bed. They used to go to the butchers to buy offal because they couldn't afford meat. And that's how they lived for a very long time when they started their business. Now, my dad went from starting that business from nothing to it becoming a multi-million-pound international success that was acquired by Dyson. Well, think about that shift from knowing no one, having absolutely no industry credibility, no money, quite literally nothing. He worked in agriculture, but he'd never worked in agriculture a day in his life before this, to becoming trusted and influential. So influential, in fact, that before he unfortunately passed away, it was about 2 weeks before he passed away, the government actually asked him to consult on agricultural policy. It's incredible. How did he do it, though? He didn't really believe in marketing, which is a little bit ironic, considering I'm a marketer and a business development consulting. But what he did, he didn't really realise was marketing and business development. He was a master communicator, and he knew the value of two things. Number one, building his network and utilising his network. Number two, knowing and increasing his value to that network. And I talk about value a lot, and I just want to clarify, I'm not talking about intrinsic worth. I get this a lot, we're all worthy. I'm talking about marketable value in a transaction, okay? He did those two things expertly. Now, when I was at university in my second year, my father unfortunately passed away. And I remember being stood at his funeral, and there was some 700 people in the room. In fact, we had to live stream it to another room because there were so many people there. And it was a huge shift moment for me. I was stood there looking out at this room of 700 people thinking like, wow, how can one person have such an impact on so many people? It's just mind-blowing. And a lot of these people obviously came from his life and business. And the stories they had to tell were stories of business. Now, he grew his business not really spending a penny on advertising. It was all through networking. And I was in my second year of uni, and it made me think of something really important, and it made me realise this. Complacency breeds stagnation. When we get complacent about where we're going and the intentional action that we're taking towards those goals, right? If we get complacent about that, we stagnate. Now, obviously, through osmosis, like going through life, we absorb life lessons and we grow. But if anyone is an ambitious individual and you have things and goals that you want to get, right? If we just do that unintentionally at life, take us to where we want to get to, that's not going to be a pace an ambitious person is happy with. Okay, so I realised that complacency breeds stagnation. Now, I told you I was in my second year of university, and my first year I did pretty well, I did okay, I got a 2-1, right? I partied a lot. Like, I was drinking every night. I was getting up at 1 o'clock the next day every day. I was kind of scraping by, doing okay, going to like the majority of my lectures. But I realized that I got complacent. So I changed it up and I focused on two things, the two things that I'd realized from reflecting on my dad's life after he had passed away. Number one, it was aggressively build my network at university, something that none of my peers were doing. Every networking event, every trade show, on LinkedIn, there were no students there. I was the only one, and I really felt like I had no right to be there, but I did it anyway. And the other thing was I built my value. Now, I understood at university that if I left with a decent degree, it was basically just a homogenous good. I did a business degree. They are 10 a penny, right? When someone sees a business degree, it's basically like every other business degree. And people view other things in the same way. Like I work a lot with financial advisors. If you're a qualified financial advisor, you're a qualified financial advisor, you're a qualified financial advisor. It's basically people view it as all being the same thing, even though, you have different levels of what you can offer. I didn't want to do that. So what I did was I did every single Chartered Institute of Marketing course under the sun. I read every single book. I knuckled down and I studied, right? I started up a freelancing agency and I started freelancing for free for a few months. And then once I got the results, I started charging. That also helped me build my network. It helped me build my credibility. So you think, while all my other peers were just going through the motions of their degree, I added all this extra value. So then when it came to getting undergraduate placements and to getting jobs, I built this network and I built this value. And both my undergraduate placement that I did for 15 months, and my placement I got after my degree were created for me. They weren't even hiring into the role. I'd never written a CV in my life. It didn't feel good to me to write a CV and put it on top of 1,000 others and hope that somebody found my value in that A4 piece of paper. I couldn't accept that. So I did it for myself. I went out and I built the network. When I got into the corporate world, because I worked for St. James's Place for a long time, for one of their larger firms, when I got into the world of work, I sort of expected everyone to be like these incredible business people that I'd grown up meeting my entire life and be really good at building their businesses. And it simply wasn't really the case. Obviously, I worked in financial advice, which, we've heard the word dry quite a lot. You guys won't think Laura's dry. I don't think financial advice is dry, but that's the perception, right? So I worked in financial advice, and there is one reason why everyone has that perception, and it is because everyone puts on the corporate mask, right? And I say this, you guys, I probably shouldn't say this in this room, but I'm going to anyway. When you picture a financial advisor, actually, can you do it now, please? Can you picture a financial advisor? I'm not going to pick a solicitor because I think that wouldn't be great in this room, but picture a financial advisor, right? Are you picturing maybe a middle-aged man in a blue or navy suit driving a midlife crisis car? Maybe signing their name with a Mont Blanc pen, right? We're all picturing a similar thing. Well, how do you differentiate yourself if you are doing exactly what everybody else is doing, if you have the exact same qualifications as everybody else, if you're speaking and looking and performing in the exact same way as everyone else? So when I stepped into the role of leading the strategy for this business, I noticed something, and it was we were getting the leads in, right? The marketing was working, but they weren't converting. I mean, I had this laundry list of leads that we were working with, and nothing was converting. And when I stepped into the role, that was really frustrating because I wanted to do a good job. So I stripped it back massively, and I put a training program in place for the younger advisors to teach them how to effectively talk to people, right? Build relationships with people, actually show empathy and understanding, and to, this is an important one, to create the right associations with themselves, right? Intentionally create the right associations with themselves, and that is personal branding. And lo and behold, conversions went through the roof. ROI shot up because they understood how to talk to people. They understood how to get visible. They understood how to, just a little bit at least, lift up the corporate mask. Now, the common denominator in these stories is that personal branding and personal connections matter, okay? Personal branding being those associations that we create with ourselves. And if we are not intentional about creating those associations, we can create the wrong ones. And I'm going to tell you a little story, because I spoke recently at a university. I've told you guys this. I spoke at a university recently, and there were two guys in the middle of the room that were chit-chatting the whole way through. And so I said, guys, you're at a personal branding lecture, and you're talking the whole way through the lecture. I said, we're talking about the associations that we're creating with ourselves, and I could be a potential employer. And the only associations that you two are creating with yourself is that you're rude and disrespectful. They didn't talk after that, right? It's very important to be intentional about the associations that we're creating with ourselves. Also, personal connections matter. Every piece of business, every job I've ever gotten, they've all been gotten through my network. If I got £1 for every time I said the word network in my job, I'd be a really rich lady. Unfortunately, I don't. So, there's one thing that I want you guys to do, and that is to close your eyes. And it feels very uncomfortable, but we're all going to have our eyes closed, so no one is going to see you. Great, you've all got your eyes closed. I want you to picture the goal. Your goal, okay? Wherever you want to get to, it could be small, it could be big. Please try and play it big. And I want you to visualize how you feel when you've achieved that goal. Where are you? What are you wearing? Who are you with? How are you celebrating that goal? Really sit in how that feels. I'm seeing a few smiles. I love that when people do that, right? How does it feel to really achieve that goal? Okay, you can open your eyes. Thank you for participating. It's sometimes hard, you know, when you want our audience participation, you think, oh, no one's going to do it. But you did, so thank you for that. The reason why I get you to do that is because no personal branding consultant should talk to you about building your personal brand and building your network and sales without talking to you about mindset, okay? And a big thing that we do, and I'm going to talk to you about how to understand your value in a minute, so this is why this is important. But a big thing that we do is we use self-deprecation as a form of humility. And that I don't believe that that's true. Okay, one thing, in order to communicate your strengths, you have to know them. Okay, in order to reach a goal, you have to own the goal. And a lot of the time, I think we'll all agree as Brits, right? We kind of make our goals small to make everybody feel comfortable, or the people that we're talking to feel comfortable. But the way that you perceive your goal, the way that you perceive your strengths matters. The story that you tell yourself is the story that you just live every single day. If you're telling yourself that, oh, I'm not very good at this, or I'm not very good at that, or, you know, I don't really know where I'm strong, or, oh, you know, I'd quite like to get a few more clients, or I'm building this little business, all that language does is write your story for you. Okay? Now, I don't believe self-deprecation equals humility. I believe that providing you don't believe you're better than anybody else, that's being humble, okay? And you don't have to go and rub your strengths in everybody's faces, but owning them and knowing them helps you to communicate them. Okay, that for me is really, really important. So, do you think that you are ready to own your goals, to step into your goals, to claim your goals? This is really, really important. Okay, what is the goal actually? You need to identify that first. What is the goal? Where's the roadmap? Where's that taking you? Are you ready to step into your goal, to step into owning your strengths and communicating them? Now, I have a simple framework for this. It's one that I work through with clients, and it is called Align, Shine, Refine. I did come up with a name, and I think that it kind of works. So alignment is the foundation. Alignment is understanding your strengths, understanding your audience, and understanding where you want to get to. It's the roadmap. Okay, shine is about getting visible, and refine is constantly iterating. And I'm going to take you through that now. So, It starts with the 3 pillars of alignment, the 3 A's of alignment. It starts with authentic alignment. And we hear the word authentic a lot. But I do think it is really, really important. Your story, for example, is really, really important. Authenticity is a cornerstone in building trust. It is so important in leadership. In fact, scientifically and psychologically, right, more leaders that are considered more authentic are trusted more by their teams, right? Their vision is trusted more by their teams. So how can we build authenticity? What we don't know, we cannot communicate. So the first thing that you need to do is get super comfortable with your strengths, right? What's your communication style? How do you communicate that is beneficial to your clients or to your network? Okay? What qualifications do you hold that's beneficial to your clients or to your network? What attributes do you have that are beneficial to your clients or to your network? Okay? Really think about the value that you hold that's different perhaps from other people. And then where are you weaker? And I love weaknesses. I think weaknesses are the most exciting, best part of personal branding. They're the best part of alignment, right? Understanding your weaknesses just means that you understand your springboards for growth. Identifying them is so important. Okay, so identify the strengths, get really comfortable with where you are strong, because what you understand, you're able to communicate. Then get really strong, get really clear on your springboards for growth. Oh, I think that skipped on a slide. We're missing a slide, but that's okay, because I can just tell you about it. The next one is audience alignment, right? Whose trust are you trying to earn? My dad did this really, really well. So his target audience was largely big landowners because he worked within the agricultural chemical sector. So a huge part of his target audience were like large landowners. And he knew that shooting was the golf of agriculture. And so he went out and made himself one of the best shots in the country. He shot 60 days a year. Sorry for any of the vegetarians in the room, I too am vegetarian, okay? So I understand. But he went out and shot 60 days a year because that was the networking of agriculture. He wore pink and yellow trousers and cardigans, right? Because he reflected back his audience. He was a mirror to his audience, and you trust what your audience, you trust yourself in somebody else. So, yeah, I keep looking at the slide as if it's going to tell me something, but it's the wrong slide. So really understand your audience. Where do they show up? What hobbies do they do? How do they talk? How do they dress? How do they smell? Who is in their network? Where do they show up? Everything. What's their lifestyle? What do they value? What are their concerns? Okay? And the emotional ones are the most important because they're the ones where you can attach your service onto it. So it's really important if you're creating content or anything like that, especially for you guys who work sometimes in quite an emotional area, like will writing. I've just done my will, for example. And it's really weird to think about that. But knowing the concerns of your clients, knowing the goals of your clients, knowing their values, you can attach your service onto those things that they care about emotionally. So they're really important to get really clear on. Also, they inform a ton of content. If you feel like I don't know what to write on LinkedIn, guys, just write down what your audience cares about and talk about that. And then you need to show up in those places as well. Show up where they go for coffee, where they are on social media. Okay? So the next one is audience alignment. Then my most favorite part of alignment is alignment to your higher self. I actually now call it aspirational alignment, right? The 3 A's. Authentic, audience, aspirational. Aspirational alignment is understanding who the person is who has already achieved your goals. How do they show up? Okay, what communication style do they use? I'll tell you something really funny. I actually am not very confident. I'm not a very confident public speaker. Me, if I was to show up on stage as Elsie Green, Jordan would be mentally mapping my exit route from the building. But I do something a little bit different. and I create this aspirational alignment persona, and her name is Danielle. Okay? And I understand exactly who Danielle is, right? Danielle is a confident, competent public speaker. She's disciplined. She engages with people. She makes people feel confident and comfortable. Okay? Danielle knows her subject matter inside and out. And so I create this persona for myself. At university, it was Andrea, but I became Andrea. Right? Andrea and Elsie is one now. So it had to move on and become Danielle if I don't knock my front teeth out with the mic in the process. Right? So Andrea had to become Danielle. And one thing I do is I have these pair of shoes. These ones on my feet right now. They're an expensive pair of shoes. And every single time I put on these pair of shoes, I embody Danielle. So I'm no longer Elsie, who's like stressed out and nervous and mentally mapping my exit route from the building. I am Danielle. Okay? So who is your higher self? So I got onto a call, someone that's just become a client yesterday said to me, she's seen one of my talks, and she was like, me and my business partner now only call each other by our aspirational alignment name. And they were like, you use it to step in. So are you a little bit disorganized? Are you not very confident in some area? Do you not like doing video on social media, right? Your higher self does. So put on the watch, put on the jacket, whatever makes you feel good, right? And step in and just play the role. Because then you are taking the intentional action you need to take, right? You're not staying complacent anymore. Intentionality is so important. You're not going to get there unless you try and take the action to get there. Okay? I'm going a little bit fast for you, Tom. Sorry, I'm going to end up a little bit earlier. The next one is shine. So the 3 A's of alignment was authentic, audience, aspirational. The next step is shine. You can become exactly who you need to become to get your clients, right? Or to get that promotion or whatever it is that you want. But unless no one sees you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if no one knows, right? I often say when I go into a company and I have a look at why they're maybe not getting leads, huge part is because they're not visible. Most places it's not a lead gen problem, it's a visibility issue. You're not visible to the right people, okay? So you did the exercise before to understand your audience, where they hang out, how they like to be spoken to. Go to those places. Show up in those places, right? Who do those people have in their net? If you can't get to the highest client, for example, but you can get to their accountant, show up there. Meet their accountant, get their accountant to get you in there. Whatever it is that you need to do. Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Instagram? Are they at the golf course? Are they at certain coffee shops, right? And you touched on this earlier, where you said that you can't talk to everybody. You can't talk to everybody. And I'll explain why. A 21-year-old uni student that's going out every single night, like I did at uni, is going to want totally different things from you than an 80-year-old retired millionaire with 8 children. You can't be everything to everyone. If you try and talk to everyone, you will talk to no one. And I always get this thing of like, oh, well, I don't want to niche down because I don't want to turn people off. And it's like, well, you're already turning people off. You're already turning people off because no one cares because they don't think that you understand them. They don't think that your content is right for them. They've got that data consistently from you. So shine, visibility creates opportunity. For all the people that are employed in this room, and maybe your goal as well is to get promoted, Harvard Business Review actually did a study that showed that employees that are more visible, like in meetings, they speak up more, things like that, they come into the office more, get promoted 3 times faster than employees that are less visible, but equally or even sometimes more competent. So that's something like really important to consider. Now, the last is refine. You can get super aligned, you can become exactly who you need to become to get your goals. You can understand your audience perfectly for now, right? You can understand your strengths and your weaknesses and where you need to grow. You can get super visible, but unless you keep going through the process, again, you will stagnate. I told you that my higher self version was Andrew at university. If I hadn't looked back at that process and designed Danielle, I wouldn't be on this stage talking to you right now. And I get a lot of business from speaking opportunities. I'm not going to lie, right? So if I hadn't stepped into the person that could be a competent, confident public speaker, I wouldn't have got that business. So you need to constantly be refining. Now, who do you need to be? Has the goalpost moves? What technology is out there? We were talking about AI earlier. What technology is out there that now we need to lean into that's going to support us? Okay, you need to be constantly refining this, constantly understanding the new skills that you have, the new weaknesses that you have. Again, weaknesses is not a bad word. But we need to be reflecting on this regularly. Hands up in this room. Who's actually written down all of their strengths on a piece of paper before? Yes. Love that we've got one. We've got one, great. But it's one person in a full room of people, right? How can you communicate what you don't know? This is a constant process of refining. So I want you to think about something. Okay? What is something you can do 1% every day just to move the needle? It might be something different every single day. What I do is I wake up every single day at like 5:36 when my husband leaves for work, and I write on a little post-it note next to my bed, what's the one thing I can do every single day to move the needle closer to my goal? And that's the first task. Even before I get out of bed, some people was like, that's so toxic, but I love it. I get my laptop from next to my bed like that. I put it on my knee, write down my 1%, and I do it before I even get out and have breakfast. Get out of my bed and have breakfast. Maybe not call a client. If that's the 1%, I might wait on that one. But if it's like send a few LinkedIn messages or write a LinkedIn post or like prep a speech or I don't know, something like that, I will do that before I even get out of bed and have breakfast. Tick, done, move the needle 1%. So that's something I ask you guys, if you're going to take anything away from that, take away that. And I'm sorry, Tom, but I am 17 minutes early, so I do have 17 minutes for questions.